Naivatmana paraschapi kartasyat sukha dukhayo kartaram manyate trajya atmanam param evacha naivatmana paraschapi kartasyat sukha dukhayo kartaram manyate trajya atmanam param evacha Naivatmana paraschapi kartasyat sukadukayo karta kartaram manyate chyajya atmanam param evacha not eva indeed atma the spirit soul na nor para another friend or enemy cha also api, indeed, karta, the doer, syat, can be, sukadukayo, of happiness and distress, kartaram, the doer, manyate, considers, atra, in this connection, agya, a person not aware of the real fact, atmanam, himself, param, another, eva, indeed, ta, also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In this material world, neither living entity nor others, friends and enemies, are the cause of material happiness and distress. But because of gross ignorance, the living entity thinks that he and others are the cause. Purport. In this verse, the word agya is very significant. In the material world, all living entities are agya, ignorant, in different degrees. This ignorance continues very strongly in the mode of ignorance, presented by material nature. One must therefore promote himself to the state of goodness through his character and behavior, and then gradually come to the transcendental platform, or adhokshaja platform, in which he realizes both his position and the position of others. Everything is done under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The process by which the results of action are ordained is called niyatam, always working. Om Ginatiramandasya Ginanjana Shlakaya Prakshu Unmilitamyana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are reading in this verse and purport about the ignorance found in the material world. As Prabhupada says, all living entities in this material world, to different degrees, ignorance. So we should understand ignorance and knowledge, the different ways they manifest in the material world. Prabhupada recommends here that one should promote himself from the stage of ignorance, from association with tamagun, into association with sattvagun, to the stage of goodness, as a preliminary method or a preliminary action before coming to the Adhokshaja platform, to the platform of pure Krishna consciousness. So as we understand, the mode of goodness is in some sense, the takeoff pad for the plane back home, back to Godhead. Because if one is in the mode of goodness, one can begin to understand things as they are. There are so many big scholars, academics, thinkers, so-called intellectuals that posture themselves as uh, vastly learned or authorities on one thing or another. We should understand that actually they're all in ignorance. That unless one is actually in the stage of goodness, one can't really be an expert on anything. That one should not be held as an authority on anything. And we see factually that with these cat and dog academics, cat and dog so-called philosophers, that they act as if they have figured out the truth of the universe, the world, what actual reality is, but their theories are just ridiculous. I've talked before about this idea that Prabhupada always stressed that life comes from life. As the opposite, which is very much lauded by the and promoted by these scholars in the mode of ignorance, is that life comes from matter. But it is such an absurd theory and deserves to be ridiculed. If I said, "Oh, my father is a rock and my mother is slime," what what sense is there in that? It is the theory of a madman. If I insisted, "No, no, no, I did not have a human father and human mother. My father is simply this stone, and my mother is some slime on the top of it," you would say, this man needs to be medicated. He is having delusions that he needs to be locked in a psychiatric facility until he can come back to proper reason and proper health. But if you dress it up as, oh, primordial soup, DNA, RNA, this and that, fluctuating temperatures in ponds, oh, this is very good science, that somehow or other, nowadays, life cannot come from non-life. But, you know, one day, a long time ago, life arose from a primordial soup of complex chemicals. It is the theory of a madman. Likewise, even going further back, that the entire universe is just some quantum fluctuation, that there's some inflationary events, and then all the varieties of life, enjoyment, and distress came into existence. This is also all of these theories that are held very dear by the modern scientists, modern philosophers, materialistic scholars. We should recognize they are all born from the mode of ignorance, which one of the symptoms is madness. So we should not give much weight to these theories. People are bewildered by them because they're dressed up in all sorts of scientific or mathematical language. But we should recognize they are the theories of crazy people, that we can ignore them without any doubt or without any harm coming to us. We should focus on hearing from those in the stage of goodness, at the very least. So this mode of ignorance is everywhere in the material world. This as is explained in this purport. The mode of ignorance, or the material world, is a place of ignorance because we come here to forget our eternal relationship with Krishna. And so we think that our happiness and distress is caused either by ourselves or by others who are friends and enemies. Oh, I have arranged my life in this way so that I am very happy. Or I could have arranged my life in this way that I'm happy, but I did not. I was foolish, or I was forgetful, or something like that. And so I did not arrange my life in a way to be happy, and therefore I am distressed. Or this person is very pleasing to my senses, so I will consider this person a friend, and the good time will flow. That's this friend or lover or subordinate will give me much happiness. And I think that these other people who are against my sense gratification, they are my enemies. And whatever they do is designed to simply give me distress. The living entity, because of ignorance, thinks in this way that I and others who are around me have caused my happiness and distress. But actually, these things are caused simply by contact with material nature. We should understand that if we are associating with the material energy, happiness and distress come of their own accord, automatically, without any separate endeavor. This is the laws of karma, that by choosing to come under the control of the material energy, we have to come under the control of her laws. Just like if I decided to take citizenship in a certain country, say I move to France or Germany or Costa Rica or anywhere else, and decide to take citizenship in that place, then I must obey their laws. It cannot be that, oh, I will take citizenship and enjoy all the benefits, but I will simply be criminal. Now, if I'm criminal, I will be put in the prison house according to the laws of the state. Likewise, if I do some very good service for the state, then I will be rewarded. And it's the same in the material world, that by choosing to come to this material world, we have voluntarily come under the reign of happiness and distress. And we must suffer or enjoy according to our contact with material nature. And understand that all endeavors in this material world are overcome by fault. So that no matter how pious we are, there's some sinful activity, some papa there. And so we must suffer the distresses. And no matter how sinful we are, even by accident, there might be some punya, some pious activity. And so there's some happiness. So happiness and distress are always there as far as we are tangled with the material energy. But it is up to us whether we mm, prolong or become further entangled in the material energy, or to come out, choose to come into Krishna consciousness, which is true freedom. We should actually understand what this material world is. We should have a very realistic view of the material world. Because we talk about happiness and distress, and we might think, oh, we will bounce. Yeah, there's some distress, but as long as I have happiness, it's there. But we should understand actually what this futile happiness in the material world actually amounts to. The analogy is given in Shastra, I believe it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that actually this material world is simply a hole for passing stool in. So nowadays, of course, we have indoor plumbing and things like that. But in our setup, it all goes to septic tanks. So I don't know, maybe we should take a field trip one day and then you can open up the septic tank and all look inside and see that this is actually the state of the material world. This is how we should understand the place that we are currently situated, no matter how superficially happy or distressed that we are. So we should think about this analogy, this uh, visualization of the material world, that is simply a place for passing stool. And what is this stool? It is all the things that we try to enjoy. And our position is as worms and maggots in this septic tank of the material world, trying to taste palatable things in the form of stool. So everything that is material, everything unconnected to Krishna, we should understand simply to be transformations of this stool taste. All these great literatures, poems, novels, simply very tasty stool. Great theorems of mathematics or physics or science, other forms of stool. Palatable food that has not been offered to Krishna is simply eating stool. Plato, Aristotle, all the philosophers, just very high quality stool. Even the whirlwind romance with our beloved, simply a big bite of stool. Everything in the material world is nothing more than trying to enjoy something abominable. We should understand this and not get enamored with the material world. We have to have a realistic view. So if we have a idea, oh, I can enjoy and serve, I'll do both, we will stay stuck here again and again, birth after birth, and death after death. So one might think uh, that, oh, this process is very nice. I can have material desires and be elevated to a better situation for material enjoyment. We understand that the holy name can give all benedictions to the living entities. That if one wants to uh, be elevated to a very good, so-called good, material position with lots of material so-called enjoyment, that is available to one. I heard one time a senior devotee talking about, he had preached in India for a few decades, talked about this one person who would come and do service. Uh, this older Hindu gentleman, who would come and do service at the temple. And despite coming and doing service and everything, this person was very clear that his goal was to reach the heavenly planets. But he knew that by serving the devotees, by serving in the mission, he could amass massive amounts of punya and also deal with sinful activities. We sing every morning, Yani Kani Chapapani, Brahmahatati Kani Cha, that Tani Tani Panishanti Prakshana Pade Pade, that every step walking around Tulsi, we get rid of so many sinful activities, even up to the standard of killing a brahmana, that the reactions of such wicked deeds can be cleared. So uh, we should not get enamored by this standard of doing devotional service, because we might end up in the heavenly planets where the standard of material life is much greater than on this planet. But we will waste lots and lots of time. And it's not necessarily that, oh, we'll go to the heavenly planets and make even more advancement and even more advancement. If one is enamored with the material energy and all the things the material energy has to offer, there's every possibility of falling back down into the material pool and wasting millions and billions of lifetimes trying to enjoy the material senses. So we should understand that this material world is simply a place of ignorance, which means forgetfulness of Krishna. By coming to the stage of goodness, we can come to the adhoksha platform, as it is said, the transcendental platform of understanding our relationship with Krishna. By engaging in the process of devotional service, by reading Srila Prabhupada's books in a submissive mood, by chanting Hare Krishna, by engaging in devotional service, we can gradually purify ourselves of the taste for this stool of material enjoyment. This is usually said as getting the higher taste. And automatically, if one has something higher, one gives up the lower tastes. One gives up the lower objects. That if we engage in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with the proper mood, then we can come to the stage of rendering pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord and get rid of attachments for the lower things. This is understood in the Shashastakam prayers. We have the verse starting with Trinada Pisunishana, that we must be more humble than the straw on the streets, more tolerant than a tree, lower than a blade of grass. And then we can Kirtanya Sada Hari, constantly chant the holy names of the Lord. And then what is the result of this? Nadanam Najana Nasundari. I do not want wealth. I do not want followers. I do not want attractive partners. I simply want the service of the Lord, birth after birth. this is the stage that we are trying to come to, where we give up all these so-called enjoyable things and come to the platform of pure Krishna consciousness, pure enjoyment in serving the Supreme Lord. I was listening to a lecture by Srila Prabhupada yesterday, and one thing that he said is that spiritual life is the life of constant enjoyment. Sometimes we approach spiritual life as, oh, I want to, there's so many enjoyable things out there, illicit sex, intoxication, uh, books, movies, television, that, oh, there are so many enjoyable things, but this process of Krishna consciousness is making me give all of them up. That I have to have this austere, or I want to enjoy all these things, but I'll simply repress, repress, repress. No, this is not spiritual life. Spiritual life is the actual enjoyable situation. That actually, even the simplest acts in spiritual life is far more enjoyable to the best the material world has to offer. One can be situated in the heavenly planets with attractive partners at your beck and call, with the most palatable foodstuff, with youthful vigor and beauty, and all other enjoyable things that are available to the denizens, to the inmates of the material world. But the happiness generated from all of those enjoyable things is not even a fraction, not even a fraction of the fraction of the happiness that is generated by sweeping the Prasadam hall here at Gita Nagari. That actually any service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendentally blissful. That even the smallest thing that we do for Krishna is full of so much nectar that the trappings, that the attractions of the material world become insignificant. But we have to engage properly and in the proper mood. Otherwise, our advancement will be very slow. But if we try to minimize our devotional service, or think that it is simply business or trade or something like that, then we will not develop taste. Taste begins in loving surrender, or in desiring loving surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, by long association with material nature, we might not be able to surrender all at once, like Kadvanga Maharaj. But we can at least have the desire. Oh Lord, help me appreciate devotional service to your lotus feet. Help me taste the transcendental bliss that is available all the time simply by serving you. And we should understand by deep study of the Bhaktivedanta purports, of the lectures, conversations, all the teachings of Srila Prabhupada about the actual position of the material world and how we try to enjoy. Ruchi, taste, for the holy name, begins when we understand that this material world is not a place to be attracted to. Then we can actually fully put our hearts into the process of devotional service. As long as we are attracted to the so-called enjoyable things of material nature, there will always be some part of ourselves that we are holding back from fully engaging in bhakti yoga and the transcendental service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we need to engage in the process. We need to chant Hare Krishna, trying to, as much as possible at our stage, remove offenses. We need to submissively and mm, deeply study the words of Srila Prabhupada, and we need to intensely engage in devotional service to to desire and to actually have a roster of devotional service that is so intense that we forget to enjoy our senses with material sense objects. Oh, I have very little service today on the roster. Krishna Surya has not given me so much. So let me find other things that I can do. I can do this service, I can do that service. And in this way, we can forget our attachments to material things. And as we advance in this process, we come actually to the spiritual world. Do not think that, oh, the material world is one location and the spiritual world is another location, and then I'll simply be picked up from here and go there. No, being a resident of the spiritual world is actually available right now. This is the land of Lord Damodar. Do you not think that he brings the spiritual world with him? It is simply a matter of vision. That if we turn our vision from forgetfulness of Krishna to remembrance of Krishna, from looking at material sense objects to looking for devotional service, then we are already in the spiritual world or spiritual consciousness, because we are always engaged in the service of Sri Sri Radha Damodar. It is not a different Krishna that resides at Gita Nagari than resides in Krishna Loka. It's the same Krishna, and so is the abode is non-different. It is just simply that we have to, by these processes that I've mentioned, chanting, hearing, and seva, turn our consciousness from the material vision to spiritual vision. And then one is always associating with Krishna. And one can fulfill or one can realize the promise of spiritual life, which is constant, unending enjoyment. So we should take these processes very seriously while we have this rare human form of life. We have a very small amount of time in this form of life, and who knows where we will go next. Maybe it's a human form of life, maybe it's a demigod form of life, maybe it's something else. But while we are here, we should take advantage of the opportunity to perfect our life, to reach the goal of mm, every form of life, which is pure devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then we don't have to come back to this miserable spiritual world, which, as mentioned, is simply a place for trying to enjoy stool-like tastes of material enjoyment. So I'll end here. We have about 17-ish minutes left for comments, questions, complaints, additions, subtractions, etc. Anybody?
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Yeah, I thank you for a very powerful class,
Thank you.
reminding us of the true nature of material existence. It's
Oh,
it's nasty. We don't often speak of it that way, either because we are clinging to the illusion that it's not really so bad, or that some aspects of it are actually nice,
hmm,
or sometimes we just don't want to freak people out who aren't ready to hear such things. Um, but everything is relative, and within the scope of material nature, the best enjoyment of the middle planetary system is insignificant compared to the higher planetary systems.
mhm,
But even the best that the higher planetary systems have to offer is um, insignificant compared to the boundless pleasure of spiritual life, which is actually ever increasing and without any inebrities, without any of the negative elements that are always present in the scope of material nature. Even in the um, even in neophyte stages of cultivating Krishna consciousness, it's possible to appreciate the superiority of um, the path of bhakti, superior even to the best um, sorts of endeavors within material life. Our life consists of actually, it's just recreation, Srila Prabhupada said. Um, the devotees may not always see it that way if they're under the control of Tamagun, or having a bad day. But really, when you analyze it, our life is pretty good.
mhm,
Gradually, by chanting Hare Krishna, we are relieved of all the stress and anxiety of material life. We're not uh, disturbed by the fact that everything is of a temporary nature. We understand it as such, and it doesn't matter because we have something superior that is permanent. We have, a solid foundation to cling to. And our activities, what Prabhupada reminds us, consists of singing, dancing, and feasting.
mhm,
Um, and who enjoys a life like that? Others have to struggle very hard. Um, the living entities within the scope of material nature are always engaged in a constant struggle for existence. Just to maintain themselves, they have to struggle very hard. There's all kinds of adversity. There is danger everywhere. Everything is a struggle. Nothing comes easy. All kinds of sacrifices have to be made, and plans don't always work out, or they tend to never work out, or even they work out temporarily. Ultimately, they fail. Everything is thwarted. Eventually, everything that you have struggled for is lost. Everything is forcibly ripped away from you. Um, and in many cases, life is just, for the materialist, it's just wall to wall misery.
mhm,
And to such an extent that many um, view the prospect of death as a more attractive option. Some choose to end their life, or they go through life constantly contemplating that option because life appears to them to be quite miserable. And interestingly, they actually are they have a better grasp on reality than others. Um, they are regarded as mentally ill. This individual is depressed. He is thinking that that life is so bad that he should end his life. But those individuals actually are, relatively speaking, in terms of mental health, their mental health is superior. They're actually seeing the reality, whereas those that are considered to be um, of a more balanced psychology, they actually are deeply illusioned. They're thinking that a terrible situation is actually okay. It's a dreadful illusion. They're living in a dream world. They're completely removed from reality. But when a person starts to see the material nature for what it really is, it appears quite horrible. That's not mental illness. That's the beginning of seeing the truth. The problem is that they don't have the benefit of any higher knowledge. They don't have a superior alternative, and so they contemplate suicide actually because all they see is that the material nature is a nightmare. It is a nightmare. It's a terrible situation, but it's not all in all. And so devotees are not depressed by this fact. They are always hopeful because they know that there is something superior, and um, and they feel themselves actually making progress towards that day by day. And so they are not even just hopeful, but actually joyful because the process of progressing um, towards Krishna is, in fact, a truly joyful process. It's joyful at every stage, even in the very beginning stages. It's quite wonderful. So devotees are joyful, whereas others are quite miserable. Um, anyway, that's just some of the thoughts that occurred to me. And the whole process for us is everything is dependent upon the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, which comes easily and automatically. All the good qualities of a devotee automatically manifest in someone who simply chants Hare Krishna. It's an incredibly simple process. It's an incredible boon that we have in Kali Yuga. All we have to do is chant Hare Krishna. But
Mhm.
the one issue is that we have to chant without offense.
Mhm.
So really, our endeavor boils down to that one thing that we have to try to become offenseless. But once again, um, there is no way actually to endeavor separately to try to minimize offenses. Actually, the only way to reduce offenses is also by chanting Hare Krishna. If your chanting is offensive, there's no way to atone for offensive chanting. The only thing you can do is just to continue chanting, and gradually by that chanting you become offenseless. There's no other means. There's no other way. There isn't any other process. There's nothing else you can do to
Mhm.
minimize or eradicate your tendency to commit offenses. And there's no way to atone for those offenses other than simply chanting Hare Krishna. And so therefore it said there's no other way. There's no other way. There's no other way. Everything boils down to simply chanting Hare Krishna. And it's easy and joyful. So much so that even, we go on Harinam Sankirtan sometimes in the heart of some nasty city, perhaps on a Friday or Saturday night when everyone's out intoxicated and getting into all kinds of trouble. Um, as Yamaniyama Das Brahmacharya says, what is that? Breaking regulative principles all over the place. So, but they encounter a Harinam party, even from some distance. They hear the sound of kirtan, and immediately they feel some transcendental ecstasy. They are moved to dance and sometimes chant along with us. They don't understand what they're feeling, but there is actually some immediate transcendental ecstasy manifested there. They may be committing some offenses, but their offenses are mostly they are innocent.
Right.
And anyway, so wonderful process. It's ecstatic from the get-go. Um, Chanting, dancing, feasting. Uh, what more could you ask for? Fabulous, fabulous process, and our immense good fortune. Thank you again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Haribo. We have a in-person question, one of the pujaris. Question or comments? I'm not sure yet.
I was just wondering, you were speaking about how like devotees when they do service they don't like don't fully surrender, like there's some aspect of their service that they're holding back. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes that can happen even after like years of doing service. There's like some aspect you're holding back. I was wondering if you could speak about like why that is, or maybe how to like just give everything.
Yeah. So, on this point, I can say some things. One, of course, is just to keep rendering devotional service, no matter what. Um, some of it is just determination that if one makes the commitment, Krishna, no matter what you give me, don't give me, no matter what happens to me, what doesn't happen to me, uh, I will never give up your service. And then when things come, maybe the thought comes like, oh, maybe I should, go do something else or, not have this or that, then you just remind yourself, no, I've made the determination. I'm giving everything to Krishna. And then Krishna will help you. So ultimately, we are not able to overcome the material energy on our own. It's Krishna's divine energy. Daivesha Gunamai. So only Krishna can overcome for us the material energy. And we should, one of the best ways to overcome these things is attacking our material attachments by the knowledge found in Srila Prabhupada's books. So if we find ourselves with some very complex or uh, deeply rooted anartha, we can make a specific effort to analyze it from the uh, viewpoints of Shastra, of Vaishnava Siddhanta. I uh, did this, for example, in terms of attachment to materialistic science. That, even after years of reading Prabhupada's books, listening to lectures, all these things, I could see there are some tiny seeds, tiny remnants of the scientistic mentality still within my heart. That anartha was still there. So I analyzed very thoroughly, actually, the epistemological uh, methods of both Vaishnava Siddhanta versus materialistic Siddhanta, the outcomes, the incomes, the all of it. And then just realized by that study and by praying to Krishna that, uh, materialistic science is just ridiculous. Their whole epistemology is bogus. and the anartha left. So there are different things that one can do, but ultimately it is up to Krishna when he decides to remove these things. So basically, these uh, three things that I've mentioned in the case, uh, chanting Hare Krishna, endeavoring as much as possible to give up offenses, in-depth study of the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, and trying to engage in devotional service as intensely as we can, whether or not we feel like it. If we do these three things, then our success or victory is practically assured. So hopefully that answers the question. If not, Adipalila can come running back out of the Pujari room to ask or rebut something. So we are basically at the time for greeting the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his associates. I hear footsteps. Hi. So, is there another comment?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful class.
Hi, thank you.
Very exciting.
All right, thank you.
We're gonna do Guru Puja first.
We're going to do Guru Puja first. Okay, so I guess we will end here. Srimad
I have
Bhagavatam
something
ki.
to add if there's a moment.
Yeah, I think we have a few moments.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada spoke about this condition of what he referred to as causeless unwillingness, that we just are reluctant to surrender or to perform some service. He described it sometimes as causeless unwillingness, and the solution for it, he said. There are a few mentions in his books. I'll read one instance from The Science of Self-Realization. He says the Acharya's message is to take us back to our original home, back to Godhead. Let me repeat, therefore, that we should hear him patiently, follow him in the measure of our conviction, and bow down at his lotus feet for releasing us from our present causeless unwillingness for serving the Absolute and all souls. So he's recommending that we take shelter of the spiritual master or some advanced devotee, um, that by their mercy, and we can beg them for their help. By their mercy, we can overcome this causeless unwillingness. There is a gradual process uh, of um, progress in devotional service that corresponds to our degree of faith. And that faith it begins by associating with devotees. It is described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Adal Shara Tata Sadhu Sangota Bhajana Kriya Tato Narta Nivritti Syat Tato Nishta Ruchi Tataha, and so on. Um, it means that in the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self-realization. That brings one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. And in the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master. And under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. By execution of devotional service and the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes free from all material attachment and attains steadiness in self-realization and acquires a taste for hearing about the absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. This taste leads further forward to attachment for Krishna consciousness, which is matured in bhava, or the preliminary stage of transcendental love of God. And then real love for God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage. So the whole process begins with associating with devotees. And by that, gradually, this Shraddha, faith, begins to develop. Eventually, it becomes firm faith. But the willingness to engage, rather than being consumed by this causeless unwillingness, is it depends upon faith. If you let's say you want to go ice skating, there's a body of water, a pond or something, and you're apprehensive because perhaps the ice is not thick enough to support your weight. So initially, you don't have sufficient faith to step onto the ice. So you put one foot out and you lean on the ice a little bit. Maybe you pound your foot a few times. Maybe you take a heavy rock and drop it on the ice to see what happens. And maybe you develop enough faith to put 2 feet on the ice, and then gradually you start jumping up and down, and you jump higher and higher, and the ice still does not give way. So eventually, you have enough faith that you lose all concern, and the next thing you know, you're skating all over the place. So it's a gradual process of the development of faith that enables us to step off the material platform in which we are taking shelter of sense gratification, and step onto the platform of devotional service. Um, anyway, we don't have a lot of time, but I thought I would um, add that. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Yeah, thank you for the comments. I find this phrase, causeless unwillingness, very interesting. Because, yeah, when you were talking about it, uh, ultimately, uh, a kind of thought came that ultimately everything comes down to our free choice, whether to associate with Krishna or with Maya. Uh, and, we do have free will in that regard. So yeah, thank you for your comments. I'm not sure. We're greeting the deities now. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai.